We're taking a peek into geek culture and sharing our top 10 fandom favorites. Let Your Geek Sideshow presents Geek Culture Countdown. Hey guys, this is Kitty.
And this is Paul.
And we are coming to you from the Sideshow Studios in Southern California. Welcome back to the Geek Culture Countdown. This week we are positively excited to be taking a look at the top 10 cat-themed comic book characters. These heroes, villains, and vigilantes are known for their keen sense of feline flair, with the grace, ferocity, and catitude of their namesakes. Who needs 9 lives when you get comic book reboots? Listen along for all details as we see which feline fighters and cat burglars clawed their way to the top of this countdown. Let's get started. Was that a pun? Was that a Paul?
Paul.
For those of you,
Super drawn out.
Kitty and Paul.
Yes.
So this one's
Spelled
actually
as it sounds.
Yeah.
With 14 W's. Yes.
This is actually a pretty fun throwback because my first Geek Sideshow podcast was top 10 fictional felines, fictional cats, and I was so scared. But look how far we've come, and so I really wanted to do this one because actually this one is pretty crazy. It seems like there's maybe like 3 types of cats that superheroes take their
that have made the list. I mean, there's quite a few. There's the cat family. Will be well represented in this podcast.
And there's still some colors, and if you want to be like colored tiger, there are several colors still available to you after we read this list. But enough vamping. Let's get right down to it. Number 10 on our list is Bronze Tiger from DC Comics.
Yes, I was really happy with this one. This one was it literally battled for a spot. And who he beat we'll get to that later. But yeah, that's going to be Benjamin Turner, who was introduced in Richard Dragon Kung Fu Fighter number 1 in 1975.
Which is based on a novel. The comic was based on a novel, I believe.
Yeah, so it was based on a novel, but it was like his first like comic book appearance, like in mainstay comics. And this was an interesting one because there's not like he's kind of one of those people that you see him recycled in the like the Suicide Squad, and he doesn't get, he's not. I mean, I would love it. I want all the comic books for all the times, but I don't think he's getting a solo series anytime soon.
No, not
but
really.
He did have some love in the Arrow show. He was in that, and that was a fantastic.
He was in. Wasn't he in like 2 different seasons of the show?
I believe he was. Yeah, it was Michael J. White, I believe,
Okay.
who did it. Who's like an actual martial artist, and he just like fit the role fantastically.
So for those who don't really know about Bronze Tiger, he is and a lot of these characters, as their names and code names and identities would suggest, to be cat-like, you have a very particular set of physical attributes, and a lot of these characters specialize then in martial arts. He turned to martial arts to channel his rage after an incident when he saw a burglar attacking his parents, and he killed the guy with a knife.
Yes, and he had to like you said, he had to channel that, and he ended up like liking the power that he got from killing someone, and he's had a real interesting run, I think. I mean, he's like, I had to look up some of the folks that like he trained with, like O Sensei, like that. Those are like deep cuts. Like O Sensei, it's just martial art lore is that we're getting into, and there's quite a bit on either side of the comic book fence there. But Bronze Tiger's one of those. He's just good at all of the martial arts. Yeah,
his resume is quite impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not even half the list, but he's proficient in Jeet Kune Do, karate, kung fu, taekwondo, hapkido, jujitsu, I believe. And he's even, I think he's beaten Batman in terms of like martial arts skill in hand-to-hand combat.
On a couple of occasions, I think for a while, like on the Arrow show, I think they kind of play with that on the Arrow show. Arrow was kind of like the proto Batman before they really started doing that. Like he was like the gritty, grumpy hero, and Flash was like the Superman aspect of it. And he beat Oliver Queen, who's supposed to be this like martial arts, master, and then he met his match, and it's just you love to see that, and he's just one of these people that's on the back burner, unfortunately.
I think the first time I ever heard the character's name personally was when they were promoting that animated direct to DVD, or no one uses DVDs, direct to Blu-ray, Suicide Squad animated feature. Kind of after the live action film had its day, they were like, we're going to do the animated. But the DC animated films are all fantastic.
They're usually, they usually knock it out of the park.
Yeah. So continuing on the list, we've got a kind of a glut of tiger themed characters here. So bear with us, please, or tiger with us, please.
Yes.
Number 9 on our list is Tigra from Marvel Comics. Thank you. Thank you for that pity laugh.
Jazz snaps.
Oh my goodness. Tigra has quite a bizarre history. She is civilian alias is Greer Grant Nelson, but now she's known as Tigra. And she was formerly a non-powered crime fighter known as the Cat, introduced in the 70s alongside such notable, you kind of, when they start introducing characters in an era, you can kind of tell where, they all kind of came from the same, like
what mood board they were working from.
Yeah, and Doctor Strange and Iron Fist also kind of came from that, mystic 70s.
Yeah.
So going along with that, we had 3 very fierce female characters. So the Cat was introduced alongside Night Nurse and Shauna the She-Devil. They were originally aimed to attract new female readers. The Tigra persona, though, is actually like a mantle. If you're watching the new Netflix She-Ra series, the best I can describe it is she is the She-Ra. She is the Tigra is the avatar of the cat people, which that's their name. There's this alien race called the cat people. They were, or not alien race, but they were created by dark arts and sorcery.
Right.
And so Greer Grant was transformed in Giant-Sized Creatures #1 into the Tigra, but most people just call her Tigra. She was actually saved from death by accepting the role. It gave her striped fur. She's got retractable claws. She has more feline features. She actually has more feline DNA than human DNA, as seen when she actually had a child.
She's like an Animorph.
Remember
that show, Animorphs?
Yeah, oh, I know.
Yeah.
Animorphs actually just got recently announced that they're doing graphic novels, so we very well might cover an Animorphs comic on this countdown sometime.
You heard it here first.
I know. I was very excited. But she had a child with a Skrull who was posing as Hank Pym. And she carried that child to term in 2 months. So she's very feline, kind of creepy.
An overachiever.
Yeah, seriously. And of course, in addition, she has strength, speed, and cat-like grace. And in 2019, Hulu was developing an animated series called The Tigra and Dazzler Show. But that's kind of currently on hold. I know they fired the whole creative staff due to creative differences. But she may or may not be making her appearance in animation at some point.
You would hope so, because this is a character that I had to look at you and be like, Kitty, I don't know much about Tigra. And you're like, okay, well,
I don't know
I had to do
all
enough,
the specifics.
Yeah. But there's a rich history here, especially with the mantle being passed. I think that could provide so much content for, just like generations. I think it could be introduced in a number of Marvel mainstays, just by the fact that this mantle can be passed.
Yeah,
that's always a good thing.
You are the Tigra, and pay attention, folks. Later on this list, as she became the Tigra, she did abandon the mantle of the cat, and we might see that pop up later on this list. But right now, we're going to jump to the next tiger-themed hero, and this is actually another group of heroes. The mantle can be passed. White Tiger from Marvel Comics.
Yes.
So this is an identity that has been passed down and around, because it's gone from an uncle to his niece to her aunt.
Right.
This one's actually really cool. So White Tiger is the first White Tiger was Hector Ayala,
right.
who was the first Marvel Latino superhero, and he was the first Puerto Rican superhero character as well.
Yeah. Which I did not know. That was really interesting, especially for the time that it was introduced.
Yeah.
It was very just bold of them to do it, and I think the character in the mantle was fantastic of how it was passed.
Yeah, and the White Tigers are again, it's the martial arts, but they are granted some abilities. Notably, Angela Del Toro, when she was wearing her white costume, she was able to camouflage, but not like, oh, White Tiger standing in the snow kind of camouflage. She could camouflage with her urban surroundings, but only when she was wearing her costume.
Right.
Their powers are granted by the Jade Tiger amulets that give strength, speed, stamina, other superhuman physiological abilities. So the first White Tiger was Hector Ayala. The second White Tiger, I believe, I don't remember if she was the second or the third. There was a White Tiger that was actually a tiger who was evolved by the High Evolutionary, and she joined the Heroes for Hire only briefly. So she actually wasn't associated with the Ayala family. It was real weird. We had a White Tiger who was actually a tiger. But then his niece Angela Del Toro took it over. She kind of appears a lot in the Daredevil comics and that kind of street level. And then Ava Ayala is Angela's aunt and Hector's youngest sister.
Right.
She made her appearance in Avengers Academy. White Tiger has joined teams like the Heroes for Hire, the New Avengers, the Mighty Avengers, led by Captain Britain. It's just cool. They're an understated hero who has appeared kind of on the ground level with not quite Marvel Knights status, but should still be recognized alongside them.
I don't know if I was like thinking while you were talking, and I was thinking this. She's in, I believe it's Angela Del Toro's version. She's in. Was it Ultimate Alliance when you just talked about this? The show. It's a Spider-Man show.
Oh, yeah. Spider-Man and
something.
I wanted to say His Amazing Friends. That's not it. Yeah, but it's Spider-Man Ultimate.
I know.
Something.
I know it was on like Disney XD or whatever it was. But
yes, because she was alongside Luke Cage.
Yes,
and
she had a pretty prominent. She has still a prominent run in that. And when I was kind of like, this is another one I was just like, Kitty, I don't know so much about. And I was looking into it, and I got so bogged down in the Hector Ayala portion of it. And I thought that was so fascinating that it was originally 3 people. Then he put all of them on at once and turned him. And it was just like too much power for Hector, the original White Tiger, and he couldn't. You can maybe speak to this. Your Marvel knowledge is far superior to mine. If in the original comics with the White Tiger of Hector Ayala, it said that he wouldn't remember that he was White Tiger, like the White Tiger persona would take over.
Yeah, that was. Not nearly. They didn't carry that through all the way, but it was one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm assuming this power, and the cat-like instincts kind of take over in the persona.
It became more of like the mantle type,
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of mantles that do get passed around again, we promise not all of these are. Most of these get passed around. I think our top tier ones they keep it to themselves, but
yes.
Number 7 on our list is Hellcat from Marvel Comics. She's personally one of my favorites on the list.
And then you take the reins on this one.
I feel like I'm dominating the podcast so far, but I take a deep interest in some of these very weird characters. Hellcat is Patsy Walker, who originally debuted in Miss America magazine number 2, which was published by Marvel's precursor, Timely Comics. So technically, she always belonged to Marvel in a way.
Right.
I actually thought she was acquired from another company, but once I learned that Timely was Marvel's precursor. And then, of course, Patsy Walker starred in a self-titled teen romance comedy book that, if you're familiar with the Jessica Jones Netflix series, then it's almost consistent with the like, oh yeah, Patsy Walker. So then when she was introduced into the Marvel mainstream for superhero comics, they kept that story of like Patsy was licensed out by her mother as a comic book character. So when Greer Grant abandoned the cat identity to become Tigra, Patsy Walker took up the mantle and was the cat briefly, but then did become Hellcat. She made her reintroduction in Avengers 144, which I own, and then she later joined the Avengers. Yeah, it's the one where she's jumping down and it says the Hellcat cometh. But she took the old costume as well.
Awesome album title.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Cat, yeah.
But yes, she took the original costume as well. Then she divorced Buzz Baxter, who became Mad Dog, and then she married Damon Hellstrom, who was the son of Satan.
Yes.
Which kind of gave her
not just a bad dude, like literally the son of Satan.
Yeah, I mean that's something you might shout at your spouse who drives you to insanity. Unfortunately, Damon Hellstrom did drive Hellcat to insanity, and then she, after they had a brief stint as a cult investigator, she did kill herself. But when you kill yourself and you're married to the son of Satan, you kind of end up in his bachelor pad. So she actually overcame some trials in hell that strengthened her latent psychic abilities that she definitely
had. Till death do us part, but
yeah,
with
funny
conditions.
Little caveat. But then she did come back from hell because cats have 9 lives, and she can summon her costume at will. She has martial arts and gymnastic skills.
Yes,
and she can sense mystical energy thanks to her time in hell. Fun note, also that I forgot to mention in the White Tiger segment. Not only does Patsy Walker Hellcat feature prominently in Jessica Jones on Netflix, Angela Del Toro gets a shout out in the first season. It's just a name drop because Jessica's trying to pass off a client and is like, I don't want to take your case. I can refer you. I think it's to Luke Cage. I think she doesn't want to take. I can't remember right now.
It
but
is
I think
the first episode, right?
maybe if it's not Hope Schlottman's
Definitely
parents.
season 1.
Yeah, it's definitely season 1. So it's either she's telling Hope Schlottman's parents or Luke Cage, but she's like, I don't want to take this case. I'll refer you to Angela Del Toro. She's a fantastic investigator, which is concurrent with her comic book history. Anyways, number 6 on our list, we've got a different type of cat.
Yes.
We're done with regular house cats and tigers. For now, we are going to Sabretooth from Marvel
a
Comics.
mythical cat.
Well, extinct more so.
Well, it's
Yeah.
of myth.
Of myth.
Yes, Sabretooth. Here's one that I do know.
Yeah, please.
Please. See, Sabretooth was an interesting one for me because this is one that he was one that I knew specifically from like the movies in the old X-Men show, because like again, I didn't really get into Marvel Comics until like 2 or 3 years ago. But Sabretooth, Victor Creed, he was also part of the Weapon X program, right? Not necessarily best friends with Logan. I wouldn't say that. They've had a very like troubled run. There's a lot of stuff.
He does visit Logan every year on his birthday,
Yeah.
whether Logan wants it or not.
He visited him once in the Rockies Mountains. Silver Fox was there. That didn't go well. I mean, there's just he's an interesting character because I think it was called. You can correct me if I'm wrong. It was Access. Is it Access? It was a big Marvel event.
Axis with an I.
Oh, Axis.
Like an Earth turns on its axis.
Yeah, and the villains became heroes and vice versa. And he actually he joined. I think he joined Magneto's X-Men, and he also joined the Avengers Unity Squad?
Yeah.
Or something along those lines?
We actually covered, on Sideshow's blog, we did cover it in an article, The Astonishing Avengers. He teamed up with Mystique and Magneto and Deadpool and Loki and I think was it Enchantress? Some other like Asgardian type.
Okay.
But yeah, they all, thanks to Scarlet Witch and Doctor Doom's weird spell that they cast. Yeah, all the heroes became villains and villains became heroes for a while.
Yeah, and it's even funny, we were talking about this whole time about like the martial arts mystic realm. He even has ties to that because he started out in 1977 as an Iron Fist villain.
Yeah.
Like even still, like we haven't gotten away from that like mystic arts part just yet.
It's the 70s, man.
Yeah, that's crazy, I assume. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was a trip. He's had a lot of really interesting stories, and I feel like a lot of writers who've written him aren't afraid to tap into like the animal instinct in him, and they very much like play into that because I mean that's one of his powers. I would say is like literally animal instinct. But again, like I'm more excited now that like knowing less and less about like X-Men characters that I can go into X-Men comics and just read into. So like I've read like the Old Man Logan and Weapon X and all these other different ones, but I really have always been fascinated by Sabretooth because he's just like such a troubled character.
Yeah, and they actually in Hickman's X-Men that's going on right now, they made an example of him in Krakoa because I believe he killed a human, and the X-Men have laws now about killing humans. Like, we're not going to do that. And he's like, what are you going to do? Like, you can't stop me. Like, we're all mutants. And they make an example of him and send him beneath Krakoa purportedly to kill him.
Yeah.
But I think he's kind of being held in the island itself until they pull him back out.
It's with him in that comic? Sorry. I mean, it's been out for a while now. I don't want to say spoilers, but where like, it's like you have the X-Men and the Fantastic Four like meet and they like keep him prisoner. Is that him in the first issue, right?
Yeah, they're transferring him over because Scott Summers is like, hey, he's our problem now.
He's our problem, right? Oh, such a good
He's
issue.
always the X-Men's problem.
Yeah, he's everyone's problem. You gotta keep him under wraps.
All right, so we've gotten to the point in the show where we're kind of halfway through, and we had 2 honorable mentions.
Yes.
Because we almost...
One I made you let me put in.
Yes. I understandably, we went really back and forth on Bronze Tiger and this choice. We'll start with yours, but there's not, I mean, for as many as we have here, there's not too many more cat-themed characters that are like hugely prominent that we left off this list. I mean, there's some small side ones here and there, and then there's of course the actual characters who are cats. Who, I mean, the weird white tiger should have been on that list, and my honorable mention actually is more of a cat than a person who is a cat themed. Anyways, your honorable mention please.
Is Catman Thomas Blake. He is a super interesting hero and a very much so like a product of his time. He was oh, wow. I wrote it down here. Yeah, 1963, I believe. 1963 is when he was brought out in Detective Comics. And he was literally just like a proto like ripoff, but he was like in and of itself, like they were like in on the joke. They were like, oh yeah, he's a career villain, so he's a villain, and he had catarangs, and he had like all manner, and he had like razor claws, and he's just a really interesting character in the fact that like it's so funny that they allowed him to just say, I'm Catman. He just let him.
So does he have like an off-brand? Because you know how we've got na 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 Batman. Would his be like nya 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 nya? You know the cat sound they make on the internet. Nya 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 nya. Catman. No, terrible.
That's it.
I love it.
What a $1 million hit right there.
And I always think of. I'm sorry, they parodied him on Fairly Odd Parents too. They had Adam West as Catman.
And this guy's and he's got like no superpowers, but he's a good fighter, and he's like I guess like under the official DC wiki, he's like a master technician. Like,
sure. That means words.
Yeah.
That means things. I know. I love when someone's superpower is like strategist. And I'm like, oh, really?
Okay.
So on the flip side, my honorable mention, I wanted to include him because there is an ambiguity with his cat theming.
Yes.
Mr. Talkie-Tawny is a member of the Marvel family from DC Comics. He's often appearing as a supporting character to Captain Marvel, also known as Shazam. He's anthropomorphic and is a tiger first and foremost, but in some versions, he does have shape-shifting abilities where he can become a man. He's usually seen walking upright, and sometimes he can turn into a giant Smilodon, which is the saber-toothed cat that Sabretooth is based on. He's capable of human speech, and there's a storyline in which Shazam can share his power with anyone he considers family, so he does try to share his power with Talkie-Tawny.
Yeah.
He was written out of continuity post-Crisis, but he did come back in the New 52 and Rebirth in different ways. A lot of times now they do see him as a tiger, like a full animalistic tiger who can talk. Yeah. There's a lot of background references, and if you saw the Shazam movie, there are quite a few references to a tiger, mostly in the plushes from the Philadelphia festival.
Yeah, I only really ever remember him in like the back pages of like the Justice League comics where like the Shazam comics spun out of the Jeff Johns stuff.
Yeah.
But like other than that, when I was like, oh yeah, I know the name. Like, it's like that, I know you from somewhere.
I just always go, there's a Shazam or a Captain Marvel cover where he's just walking down the street in a suit, like talking to Billy Batson. And it's just like, it's very funny, but I thought he deserved a mention for just being there.
Yeah, he always reminded me of an old like PlayStation video game. Every time I see him now, I think it was called like Bloodsport or something, where it was like all
that
of these.
Not what I was expecting.
It was like all of these animals who had like Street Fighter like bodies. Like it looks like they just took Street Fighter bodies and just put like a raccoon on this one and an elephant's head on this one. And they just had like, I just remember the tiger. His name was Jax. That's all I remember. I don't know why that's buried in my brain.
Maybe Mr. Talkie-Tawny could go talk to
not
Bronze
trigonometry.
Tiger.
Jax.
Oh my goodness. I love it. All right. So back to the actual countdown. We're about halfway through. Number 5 on our list is Cheetah from DC Comics.
Yes.
Another character who actually there have been several notable cheetahs. And I think it's very interesting that there's kind of a distinction between two of them are women in cat suits who just give Wonder Woman a hard time. And two of them are actually supernatural enhanced humans. And one cheetah is a dude.
Yes.
I personally like Priscilla Rich and Deborah Demain, who were the women just running around in cheetah costumes.
Priscilla Rich is hilarious. Like the way like that. It is tragic if you think about it in like from her perspective, but like from the comic bookiness of it, Priscilla Rich. I think she was at like a gala and Wonder Woman basically just like, for lack of a better word, upstaged her.
Yeah,
and then,
she has self-confidence issues.
Yeah, and then comic book shenanigans ensue. Wonder Woman beats her and she goes back to her room and like sees her own reflection in a cat costume, takes the cat rug or like that she has or something along those lines. And he's like, well, I'm Cheetah.
Yep. That's pretty standard Sensation Comics right there. I know that'd be like me running around like like in a giant, those pajama onesies that look like a little animal.
Like I'm a velociraptor now.
Yes. Watch out, Wonder Woman. But the most popular and current version of Cheetah is Barbara Ann Minerva, who was a former archaeologist who was cursed in a ritual that required the blood of a virgin. And when it was discovered that she was not a virgin, she was given these cat-like powers, but they came with a curse as well because in her human form she's very sick and weak, and she can only, in some versions she can only transform at a certain time, and in most versions we just see her as a cat almost all the time, and she has like an insane bloodlust while she's a cat. Of course, she has enhanced strength, speed, and heightened senses that allow her in that form to go hand to hand with Wonder Woman. Again, Priscilla Rich and Deborah Domain did not have any superhuman powers. And then I don't actually know a lot about the fourth cheetah, who was a usurper kind of guy. His name was Sebastian Ballesteros, I believe.
Yeah, Ballesteros.
He also had those kind of cat god powers.
From what I remember, he stole those powers, depending on which run you're reading, from Barbara and Minerva at one point, and then she asked,
you're on. I can't help.
I don't remember. Someone will correct us.
Big bad.
Basically like a light, like a reality shifting big bad.
Got it.
And they put them to battle. She killed Ballesteros and regained like the powers, and like
got it.
It required another like blood sacrifice, which is like how she originally got her original powers. Is she like sacrificed her archaeology partner or something? I believe. I think there's different versions of cheetah because there's so many. There's 1 through 4.
Yeah,
pick your fave.
They've even redone her origin. I know with like Greg Rucka, he explored it a lot in the Wonder Woman Rebirth series, because he did year 1 and the alternating issues of like the past and present. And she's going to make an appearance in Wonder Woman 88, played by Kristen Wiig. I'm very excited to see what happens. I just hope that they don't go the route of the Cats musical for her appearance, maybe. I trust DC to actually do a kind of cool version of.
I hadn't put a lot of thought into it because I'm just like so excited to see Kristen Wiig be awesome. And I'm like, wow, I wonder what they're going to do with her suit.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
I would like it to be more of like a practical suit. That'd be nice.
Yeah, if it can be as much practical makeup as possible, so we don't get the weird uncanny valley.
Like, I don't need ears. I just like to hear.
Yeah, like some nice pointed pupils, fangs, some claws. Maybe a little extra fur where it shouldn't like face fur, but not
like my facial hair where it's like not really there, but I'm trying.
They're like, Barbara and Minerva, you need a shave.
Yes.
But continuing on the list, and I like that Marvel and DC are both pretty evenly matched for cat themed characters.
They are
between the tigers.
They dry.
Yes. Number 4 on our list is Wildcat.
Yes, I love Wildcat. Again, if you haven't guessed by listening through this, I'm much more geared towards like the DC. But sitting and being around Sideshow and Kitty, it's hard not to start gaining a love for Marvel. But Wildcat, Ted Grant, who is a former boxer, he's in DC lore is known as the greatest boxer ever. He's trained Black Canary, Catwoman. He's even trained Batman in like the art of boxing, which I'm sure like took Batman all of like, he's like, okay, it's 2 days. I mastered all of boxing. But yeah, Ted Grant's, Wildcat is a really interesting character just because he's very, as far as normal canonical lore goes, he doesn't have superpowers. He's like 6'5", 200 and like
that's a superpower itself.
That is a superpower. 260 pounds. So he's very intimidating physically. And he's just punches. I even grabbed like a quote from an old Justice League comic, and he said, "Fists are nature's problem solvers." And like that wraps up the characters. Like he is affiliate. He's, as far as I know, he's always been good. And in his origins there, he was in Sensation Comics #1 in 1942. He's been around for a while, and he was originally framed by his I believe I wouldn't say his like promoters.
Yeah,
his like fighting promoters. And again, different places you can read. I've never read Sensation Comics #1 from 1942, but he killed his who he was fighting in this boxing match, was framed for that, and then that's kind of like he was inspired by Alan Scott to like don a persona.
Okay.
And actually go and, fight crime and alleviate your name. And as, Wildcat, he beat up his partners and like forced a confession out of them to like clear the Ted Grant name. So he could just like live.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. It was like a really like just gritty, he's just a really gritty hero. I mean, he's been in like the Justice League of America show, the Justice League, old, show. I'm sorry, the cartoons.
Yeah. He's going to be in the Stargirl series for the Justice Society.
I didn't know that. I was going through. I was like, wow, that's really rad.
They cast someone for Hourman, Starman, and Wildcat, and so I was like, wow,
cool.
they're really pulling out the kind of the characters that aren't as A-list.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're between the C and B list as far as I know. I mean, my knowledge of DC isn't as strong, but those are not your top tier characters.
They're definitely like as far as my knowledge goes, Ted Grant's like beloved by like no one has any. He's just very much like he's kind of a nicer Bruce Wayne when he's training people. Like he's not afraid to like hug someone and say like, oh, I'm sorry that this happened to you. But he's also, he's a pretty like tough dude who grew up in a very tough life. His like origins are, he grew up during like the Great Depression and his father was just the type of person. I don't ever remember reading anything about like his mom or anything, but his father tried to always do his best and, get him food, but he was always working. So he had to fend for himself and that's how he learned to fight. And, it's just that's just a really cool, grounded hero.
Yeah.
I which is what I love, like any, on the street level.
Now, I have read that there were a couple other people who ran around with the name Wildcat. His goddaughter Yolanda Montez and his son Thomas Bronson, who was actually a metahuman werecat. Which that's one of those ones where it's like, okay, when there's some characters like Tigra and Cheetah, it works when they become the cat person, but it's like maybe not everybody needs to be a half cat.
We don't all need half cats, yeah.
Yeah, and I have read that he also has in some iterations a magical 9 lives spell that kind of gives him some longevity because if he like grew up in the Great Depression, he's very old now. Yeah,
that's something that I read, like, just going through stuff again. I was like, I don't ever remember reading that like anywhere, but he does technically, like in the official like DC wiki, one of his powers is the ability of like de-aging. So that he can just live this, like that's how they kind of say like, oh, this is how Barry Allen can do all of these things, or this is how Alan Scott can still exist.
This is how we don't have to age our characters forward and everyone's in a perpetual state of like to digress, my favorite example of this is Jessica Jones and Spider-Man were in the same high school class. When they added Cindy Moon is now also a classmate of Jessica Jones and Peter Parker. They've only just really taken to aging up Peter Parker. Jessica Jones is a mother with a 4-year-old child. And Cindy Moon is in this perpetual state of, I think she's maybe in her early 20s, but like who knows?
Cindy Moon, also known as Silk.
Silk, yeah.
Silk.
This is like, and Flash Thompson. It's like, I want Marvel, if you ever call me up, I want to write the awkward high school reunion comic with those characters because it's like, what the heck? Like, but when the comic book companies are like afraid to age up the characters. I also know Wildcat. What little I know of him from the exclusive version of Sideshow's Black Canary premium format, the one where she's like doing the kind of the cheesecake like shush, because it came with a piece of rubble that you could put on her base that had like a poster for Wildcat's like metahuman fight night or something.
I had no idea.
I was like, I don't know who that is. I'm gonna look it up, and then it's like, okay, that makes sense.
So cool.
Same thing with the cheetah statue is really cool. There were 2 different versions of the portrait. The exclusive version, I believe, was the one where it's a woman in a cat costume. But then the collector's edition portrait was the feral cat-like features. And then there was one that had a clearly defined, like, this is a woman.
More of like the Priscilla Rich, like an homage. That's cool.
Yeah, so it's actually very cool. That sometimes I learn about these characters
Sideshow company. They're going places.
I know. They're pretty cool.
Good for them.
Number 3 on our list, because we still got a couple to go.
Yes.
Number 3 on our list is Black Cat from Marvel Comics. She is Felicia Hardy, the fictional cat burglar, which I'm surprised that more of these characters, for all the martial artists, we only have 2 very notable cat burglars, but they are in the top 3. She has been an enemy.
They stole the spot.
They did. And they... You can only have one in each company as well. Yeah. She's been an enemy, ally, and love interest to Spider-Man, and she was created by Marv Wolfman and Dave Cockrum, which that's kind of crazy because I always think of Marv Wolfman for his contributions to DC Comics.
Right, yeah.
But she's the daughter of a famous cat burglar named Walter Hardy. She had an incident in college that was traumatizing, after which she decided to learn self-defense and martial arts and gymnastics and be acrobatic. But she also has a latent subconscious ability to affect probability fields, which means that when the black cat crosses your path, it causes bad luck.
Now, that is something that I found very interesting because there are like different ways that she does this depending on like who was writing her. Like there was one that I read that the Tinkerer actually built her a suit that like it dealt with like mathematics and the probability field on a subatomic level. And then another writer was like, yeah, she can.
It's magic.
She can give you bad luck. It's magic. Yes, that's I'll tell you here every time.
There's like a similar, like I actually like the characters who can do that. Like Domino is another favorite of mine with the probability fields. But when they try to get too sciencey, it's like at a certain point, no, I don't need to. Like she's dating a guy who got bit by a radioactive spider. I don't need to know the science between. Yeah. Oh, but
that's a whole other. That's a whole podcast.
That's a whole podcast. I actually do. Hopefully someday want to do a comic book couples podcast.
Oh, yes.
Like where we examine some of the not good. And
Valentine's Day is coming up.
Woo. But she's on again, off again, famously with Spider-Man. She notably is the one of his loves who has no interest in the Peter Parker persona. And I like that we have Gwen Stacy who doesn't really like Spider-Man.
Right.
We've got Felicia Hardy who doesn't really like Peter Parker, and then we got Mary Jane who is
loves them both.
Loves them both.
Yeah.
So obviously, ship what you want to ship. But she did try to also kind of corrupt Spider-Man a little bit, but then he also kind of brought her to the anti-hero side.
Right.
But once they've split, she has lapsed into her criminal behaviors. And then in some versions of her appearance, she does have more cat-like abilities like night vision and retractable claws. But usually she's just your standard cat burglar with the set of acrobatic skills and the charm and the bad luck.
Yeah, because I guess it like depends on like again like who's writing her, what iteration you're reading. But like sometimes like her suit can give her these special abilities.
Yeah.
And other times it's like you said, like it's it's just her natural abilities, which I prefer.
Yeah.
I think it gives more like power to the character as like a human.
Yeah.
Love it.
Excellent. Well, number 2 on our list is Black Panther from Marvel Comics. I think we all know.
He's got a movie coming out.
Movie.
Didn't he do a movie?
He won like an Oscar or something.
Yeah. Didn't he make like $1 billion? Couple billion.
Yes.
Just the one.
Everybody knows the name Black Panther now, which is really exciting. He first actually appeared in a Fantastic Four comic before having his own series. The mantle of the Black Panther has been tightly kept to the royal family of Wakanda because the Black Panther is the kind of sworn protector of this fictional nation.
Right.
Most famously, of course, it has been King T'Challa, though his sister Shuri has taken up the role a couple times. But when we say Black Panther, you're talking about T'Challa.
T'Challa, yeah.
He's the protector of his nation, granted powers through a Wakandan ritual that involves a heart-shaped herb, as well as forging a mystical connection to the Wakandan panther god Bast. He's got his superhuman strength and speed, and it's pretty standard. That comes
like
with the
once we get to like the higher part, it's like we can yada yada because like they're all fantastic.
It's almost like when you're like, I'd like to be a cat themed superhero. They're like, you've got two options. You got the martial arts package, and you got the weird supernatural kind of freaky cat like.
Yeah, and if you want to plan for both of them, that's gonna cost extra.
Yeah, we can't really merge the plans.
Yeah, you're not a Diamond exclusive member.
But I'm sure if T'Challa wanted, he could buy that because he is one of the most wealthy people in the Marvel universe.
Is he not the wealthiest?
I think they use the caveat is probably one of the most because because of how secretive Wakanda is, they can't actually gauge the correct, in the comic book economy, they can't gauge the correct financial value of vibranium, but it's a lot.
We should bring our official comic book economist in.
I'd love to do a countdown of like the actual factual most financially wealthy superheroes,
right,
as well as those who can't make their bills. Anyways, that's for another time. There was also a time when one of his powers was specifically rejecting mythical energies because he lost connection to Bast, and then he forged a new connection with a different unknown panther deity. So he was kind of like, "Are you there, God? It's me, T'Challa. Like,
what's up?
Yeah, who's gonna be my panther?" Patron.
Yeah.
I was going to say sugar daddy, but that's not appropriate for the king.
Is that not it? No.
But of course, in addition to his powers, he's a skilled politician, scientist, strategist, and Hunter. That's what it says on the wiki.
On the wiki.
Yes. He's a phenomenal character, and I'm really glad they've brought him to more prominence in recent years.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and he, recently, obviously, I think anyone listening to this has probably seen Black Panther.
Or at least heard of.
Oh, or at least heard of it, yeah. And he's a really, really interesting character because I think I don't believe, as far as my comic book knowledge goes, that Wakanda existed before Black Panther.
No.
So I think he, to me, introduced the most fascinating place culturally that has nothing to do with like New York.
Yeah. Oh, thank God. Yeah. Because Wakanda is light years ahead of not even just aesthetically and culturally, but like
and
in
it was
general.
due to a meteorite that hit, right?
Yes.
And then they built the city. They built Wakanda on top of all of this. I almost said adamantium. I was like, I had it in my notes. Don't say adamantium. Of vibranium, which is what Captain America's shield is made out of. I didn't know. Again, I'm just excited to learn more and more about Marvel. I'm waiting for you to hit me with a shot collar. Like that's not true.
No, I love it.
That there's two types of like vibranium, and that I think Wakanda owns both of them. There's like the Antarctic vibranium, and
it's crazy. And we actually did a kind of on our blog, we covered Magneto's ability to control the different isotopes of Marvel metals. So there's Uru and adamantium and carbonadium, which is the cheaper version of adamantium, and then vibranium. So if you want to know how Magneto can interact, he actually cannot control solid vibranium.
Right.
But if it's an impure alloy, like there's some versions of Cap's shield that have been impure alloys, Magneto can control them. But I digress. But yes, to your point, Wakanda is so much more interesting than, say, like Latveria or Symkaria and like Madripoor. Those are because those are all also synonymous with like the seedy underbellies and like kind of like vaguely European crime places or Doctor Doom's like crash pad. But like Wakanda has its own very complex political system, economy, a beautiful culture that is reflective of the beauty of actual African culture,
right? Yeah,
in a fictitious, secretive continent.
And I love the harmonious nature of like their country and how it's like this self-sustaining economy.
It's the uncolonized
exactly,
vision
and it's like it's almost a. I mean, I'm sure there were issues and there's comics on there on Wakanda, but like it's basically a utopia, until the outside world ruins it.
Yeah.
That depends on how you ask.
The outside world always ruins things. But we are at number 1 on our countdown. Number 1, drum roll please,
Drum roll. Drum.
Thank you. Catwoman from DC Comics.
Yes.
Kind of the quintessential cat themed. Again, she doesn't have the supernatural powers, but she does blend the best of the cat aesthetic, the attitude that you associate with these, because a lot of especially the female cat characters you associate with being a little more sultry, a little mysterious, because cats are like that. Cats are...
you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, sometimes people say, "Oh, cats are unfriendly," but cats have a very specific set of needs. They're sometimes aloof, but they're sometimes very affectionate in the right circumstances. And then if you mess with them, you get the claws. Created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane, Selena Kyle originally appeared as the cat.
Surprise,
but then she tossed that one over to Marvel.
Yeah,
and
good call.
Since then she's become Batman's most enduring love interest, one of his most complex character foils as well. She's more than your typical cat burglar, but she did, as quite a few of these characters or quite a few comic characters tend to do. They began as a villainess before becoming an anti-hero who does the wrong things for the right reasons.
Right.
She's skilled with a bullwhip and also climbing pitons. But mostly you always see her with her bullwhip. Kind of, I don't know the particular term because it's not a grappling hook, but that slack line that you lower yourself into when you're doing a criminal activity. She sometimes has a feline companion, especially in the animated series. But interestingly enough, I learned she was actually put on ice for a little while due to the Comics Code Authority. From 54 to 66, after the Comics Code Authority was created, they took issue with the way she was portrayed as a female character, and a couple of female characters got the kind of like hush-hush treatment. But she did return, and she consistently ranks in the top of the lists when people do best comic book villains and heroes of all time. So she has walked the line. iconic comic book changes, or costume changes, a failed movie, but a lot of successful appearances as well.
Yes.
I don't even think we can count that movie. But
what movie?
But I'm just thinking now of Julie Newmar, Michelle Pfeiffer. Immediately go to Olivia de Baradinas' artwork for those kind of
Diamond Dust,
almost legendary portrayals of Catwoman that are both complex, but also in the case of Julie Newmar, you've got the cat puns out the wazoo. But also there's an element of levity, as was the campy style. But then, of course, you've got the, I mean, Michelle Pfeiffer almost seems like the most unconventional portrayal of Selena Kyle when compared to so much of her other stuff. But it is such a quintessential depiction of her.
It's weird because I've always liked Michelle Pfeiffer's like Selena Kyle persona. Like I've loved it. I just, for whatever reason, like that suit as a kid was always weird to me. It reminded me like she had Edward Scissorhands make her suit. That's always what it reminded me of.
Yeah, it's a strange suit, but it just the attitude and she
it just works.
Yeah, she embodied everything that we kind of come to associate Catwoman with. But then there's also the gentler sides of Catwoman. And overall, Catwoman has stolen Batman's heart time and again, and she has proved that she has what it takes to claw her way to the top of the list of cat-themed comic book characters. So, to recap our list, honorable mention goes to Mr. Talkie Tawny and Catman from DC Comics. Number 10 is Bronze Tiger. Number 9 is Tigra. Number 8 is White Tiger. Number 7 is Hellcat. Number 6 is Sabretooth. Number 5 is Cheetah. Number 4 is Wildcat. Number 3 is Black Cat. Number 2 is Black Panther. And number 1 is Catwoman. So, was this a perfect countdown, or should we catnip this one in the bud and start over? If we missed someone that you think should be on the list, be sure to check out our blog and send us your opinions at podcasts@sideshow.com. And that was the top 10 cat-themed comic book characters. Do you enjoy the Geek Culture Countdown? We are proud to bring you pop culture content completely ad-free, but that doesn't mean we don't need your support to help keep us going. Please take a moment to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting platform and help spread the word about our podcast. We welcome fan feedback. Email us at podcasts@sideshow.com with your thoughts and suggestions for how we can make our shows even better. Plus, tune in for our other pop culture podcasts. See your favorite comic and film characters evolve across 2 generations in the bi-weekly Then and Now podcast. Hear exclusive interviews with celebrities and pop culture industry leaders as they let their geek side show in Look Who Showed Up. Then get all the latest pop culture news with our daily briefing, a 2-minute breakdown of all the biggest geek headlines perfect for your Alexa or Google News briefings. We wouldn't exist without your continued support. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to let your geek side show.